During their stay at Oldtown, Jaehaerys and Alsyanna slept at the top of the High Tower, with all of Oldtown below them. The High Towers of Oldtown were an ancient family, powerful and wealthy. It had been long their custom for the lesser members of the house to join the faith. Lord Donald Hightower had a younger brother, 2 nephews and 6 cousins, a part of the faith, and in 54 AC it was Lord Donald's desire that one of them should become High Septon. King Jaehaerys didn't mind which house the High Septon was from, or whether they were even a man of low birth. His only worry was the new High Septon being an exemptionalist and support the Targaryens' right to rule. The Targaryen tradition of sibling marriage must never again be questioned by the Starry Sept, or war would once again make the realm bleed. He wanted a new High Septon to make exemptionalism an official doctrine of the faith, and though His Grace had no objection to the High Towers, none of them had yet spoken on the issue. An understanding was reached. Lord Donald praised the wisdom of the king, while across the city at the Starry Sept, the most devout convened to choose their new High Septon, the agents of Lord Hightower and the king's men among them. 4 ballots were required. Septon Matthias led on the first, as anticipated, but lacked the votes necessary to secure the Crystal Crown. His numbers then dwindled on every ballot. On the 4th ballot, tradition was broken, choosing a man who was not one of their own number. The laurel fell to Septon Athlin, who had crossed the Reach a dozen times in his litter on behalf of Jaehaerys and Queen Alsyanna. The 7 kingdoms had no fiercer champion of exemptionalism than Athlin, but he was the oldest of the 7 speakers and seemed like his term would be a short one. The king assured Lord Donald when that day did come, his own successor would be a High Tower, as long as they aligned themselves firmly with the exemption list during Septon Athlin's reign. No one was more surprised by the selection of Septon Athlin than the man himself. It took him more than a fortnight to reach Oldtown. Whilst waiting, Jaehaerys used the time to call up Bandolan, 3 Towers, Uplands and Honeyholt. He even flew Vermithor to the Arbor, where he sampled some of the island's finest choices of wine. Queen Alsyanna remained in Oldtown. The Silent Sisters hosted her in the Mother House for a day of prayers and contemplation. Another day she spent with the Scepters, who cared for the city's sick and poor. Among the officers was her niece, Rhaella, who Alsyanna described as clever and a devout young woman. For 3 days she lost herself in the Citadel's great library, only emerging to attend lectures on the Valyrian dragon wars, leechcraft, and the gods of the Summer Isles. After, she feasted the archmaesters in her own dining hall, even presuming to lecture them. She told them that if she had not become queen, she might have liked to have been a maester, that she reads and writes, she's not afraid of ravens or a bit of blood. She made it clear there were other highborn girls who felt the same. She asked why not admit them to your citadel. The archmaesters, loath to upset the queen, smiled on her words and assured Alsyanna they would consider her proposal. Once the new High Septon reached Oldtown and had been anointed, he blessed King Jaehaerys and Queen Alsyanna in a public ceremony. The King's Guard and a company of retainers had joined the king and queen as well by this time, so the king decided to travel back to King's Landing by way of the Dornish Marches and the Stormlands, with visits at Hornhill, Nightsong and Blackhaven. They were still there when a raven reached them from Storm's End, with dire tidings as their mother, Queen Alyssa, was at the point of death. Vermithor and Silverwing took to the skies, bringing the king and queen to their mother's side. The great Baratheon stronghold of Storm's End had a single tower, the massive drum tower raised by Durran's Godgrief during the Age of Heroes to stand against the wrath of the Storm God. At the top of the tower, Alsyanna and Jaehaerys found their mother, asleep in a bed that stunk of urine. She was drenched in sweat and gaunt, save for her swollen belly. A maester, a midwife, and 3 bedmaids are with her, each grimmer than the last. Jaehaerys discovered Lord Rhaegar seated outside the chamber, drunk and despairing. When the king demanded to know why he was not with his wife, the Lord of Storm's End growled that he could smell death in the room. A cup of wine with sweet sleep was all that allowed Queen Alyssa even a brief respite from the pain. The maesters explained Alyssa had been in agony for some hours and could not keep food down. He then informed Alsyanna this was no labour, the baby was not yet due, that the baby was dying too. It was thought that both mother and baby would be dead by daybreak. The choices were limited once the midwife confirmed that the queen was not in labour and that something had torn inside her. It was clear that Alyssa would die regardless of what was done, but there was a slim chance the baby could be saved. The maester's words caused Queen Alsyanna to weep. The king stepped out of the room, pulled Rhaegar Baratheon to his feet, dragging him into the bedchamber, where he repeated what the maester had just said, adding to Rhaegar, "She is your wife. It is for you to say the word of what to do." Lord Rhaegar could not bear to look upon his wife, nor could he find the words until the king took him roughly by the arm and shook him. Rhaegar then told the maester to save his son. Then he wrenched free and fled the room again as the maester sent for blades. Queen Alyssa woke from her sleep before the maester started. Racked by pain, she cried tears of joy to see her children there. When Alsyanna told her what was about to happen, Alyssa gave her consent. It is believed her last words were to save her baby, and that she was going to see her boys again. Alsyanna held her mother's hand in her own from start to finish, until the babe's first cries were heard. Rhaegar did not get the second son. The child was a girl. So small and weak, the maesters did not think she would survive. She surprised everyone, and days later, when he had finally recovered himself enough to consider the matter, Rhaegar Baratheon named his daughter Jocelyn. However, before this, all at Storm's End had to contend with one more contentious arrival. Dawn was breaking, and Queen Alyssa's body was not yet cold, when Vermithor raised his head from where he had been coiled sleeping, and gave out a roar that woke Storm's End. Moments later, Dreamfire descended as her pale blue wings beat against the red dawn sky. Rhaena Targaryen had come to make amends with her mother, but she had come too late. Queen Alyssa was already gone. Though the king told her she did not need look upon their mother's body, Rhaena insisted. After a long time, she turned away to kiss her brother on the cheek and embrace her younger sister. The two queens held each other for a long while, but when the midwife offered Rhaena the newborn to hold, she refused, demanding to see Rhaegar. She found him in the great hall with his young son Boromund, surrounded by his brothers and knights. Rhaena Targaryen pushed through all of them to stand over him and began to curse him. She told Rhaegar Alyssa's blood was on his hands, and may he die screaming. Rhaegar Baratheon was outraged by her accusations. He could not understand how it could be his doing. It was Rhaena's logic. It was him who got her pregnant, even though he knew she was not strong enough. When she had stormed from the hall, Lord Rhaegar and his brothers laughed. Rhaegar declared he did not fear the wrath of Maegor the Cruel, so why should he fear her? Thereafter, he summoned his steward to make arrangements for his wife's burial, and sent his brother to invite the king and queen to stay for a feast in honour of his daughter. It was the sadder king who returned to King's Landing. The most devout had given him the high septon he desired. The doctrine of exemptionalism would become tenets of the faith, and he had reached an accord with the powerful high towers of Oldtown. But these victories had turned sour with the death of his mother. Jaehaerys was not one to brood. The king shrugged off his sorrows and plunged himself into ruling the realm. Queen Alsyanna found solace in her daughter. Though not yet a year and a half old, Princess Daenerys began talking before her first birthday, and began walking. The little princess was a happy child, curious and fearless, delight to all who knew her. Alsyanna was so enchanted that for a time she even began to miss council sessions, preferring to spend her days playing with her daughter and reading her stories her own mother once read to her. But the stranger was not yet done with House Targaryen in the cruel year of 54 AC, and the sorrow had only just begun.